The year is 2025, and the world's attention is turning toward Nigeria once again. International headlines speak of mounting tensions, of attacks against civilians in central and northern regions, and of religiously motivated violence that has left entire communities devastated. The stories emerging from places like Plateau, Benue, Kaduna, and Taraba states paint a picture of unending cycles of revenge, reprisal, and retaliation. Washington has taken notice. The United States, through various channels, the State Department, the Pentagon, also known as Department of War, the human rights organizations, has expressed deep concern. Behind the diplomatic language, there are talks of deployment, assistance, and the possibility of stabilization operations. But Africa has had these wars before. Every intervention begins with a narrative of concern, a story of injustice that calls for global conscience. The same language preceded the interventions in Libya, Somalia, and Darfur. Each started with the language of human rights. Each ended with questions about sovereignty and self-determination. Nigeria is no stranger to international attention. It is Africa's most populous country, its largest economy, and a strategic hub for West Africa's security. Yet today, it faces internal divisions that seem to invite outside interest. The United States presents itself as a guardian of global peace, the world's policeman. But when that policeman enters Africa, the sound of the boots often linger long after the guns are falling silent.
Strength of Africa TV presents
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are at this moment. I'm your host, Adebayo Oladokun, and this is Strength of Africa TV, where truth meets courage, where the past is reawakened and the future of the motherland is reclaimed. Today's episode is titled The Eagle over the Savannah, America, Nigeria, and the Politics of Protection.
There's genocide against the poor in this country. There's genocide against Muslims in this country. There's genocide against Christians in this country. There's genocide against children in this country. To now separate it and say maybe it's one religion or the other. Interestingly, Nigeria doesn't count or do DNA of people who are killed to determine whether they are carrying a Bible or a Quran. So the number of people that were abducted on our road yesterday, did anybody find out whether they are Christians or Muslims? Whereas the U.S. can nitpick symbolically to say, because they have policies, definitely. They say, oh, there are genocides against Christians in Nigeria. Please, let's be careful. I am not in any way defending what is happening in Nigeria. But I'm just saying that the problem with Nigeria has nothing to do with religion. It's complete irresponsible leadership and insecurity that kills everybody.
Yes.
What about when the terrorists go and kill people in the mosque? When you talk about insecurity in this country today, it happens more in the north, in the Muslim part of the north. And that's the truth. That's where they go to mosque. I think they killed about 35 people in a mosque in Kas. And the people who killed them were not Christians. They are probably people who identify as Muslims. So, but the truth is that we like to water down the responsibility of our leaders by this gives them an alibi. And then the U.S. will come with a policy to say we want to protect Christians. It's okay. Let's bring a big boat and take all the Christians out and see if nobody will get killed again.
About one of the raging challenges that is facing our nation at this time. For the over 40 years that I have been a Christian, there have been killings in southern Kaduna, killings on the plateau. There have been riots. Sometimes, I think it was in France, an image of Prophet Muhammad was defaced. Who remembers that? And as a result of that, there were killings of Christians in Nigeria. And so it's nothing new. It doesn't amount to genocide. The way the West are talking about it, it's as if a Christian steps on the street, his head will be blown off. And I'm trying to understand this sudden love for Christians. Is it because we now have one of the largest refineries in the world and no longer have to ship raw materials abroad and bring the finished products? Or is it because of the 21st century minerals that we now have in our earth that are used to generate nuclear power for electric vehicles? Are those the reasons that our friends are threatening to invade our country to defend and protect Nigerian Christians?
Let's start by separating facts from assumptions. There is clear and credible evidence of widespread brutal violence across Nigeria that has disproportionately affected many Christian communities: church attacks, village massacres, mass displacements. At the same time, the available reputable evidence does not yet meet the very high legal standard required to prove genocide under the 1948 Genocide Convention, because that standard requires proof of a specific intent to destroy Christians as a religious group in whole or in part. Why genocide is a high bar? The 1948 Genocide Convention defines genocide as certain acts, that is, the act of killing, causing serious harm, creating destructive living conditions, committed with the specific intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. International jurisprudence repeatedly stresses the difficulty of proving that specific dolus specialis, that is, the special intent. Many experts therefore reserve the term for situations where there is evidence of coordinated policy or intent to eliminate the group, not merely recurrent mass killings or targeted attacks. Because of this legal threshold, independent investigation and proof of systematic intent are necessary before a formal legal finding of genocide can be made. Let's assess the available evidence against the standard. The acts. There is documented killings, village burnings, church massacres, and displacement consistent with the acts listed in the Genocide Convention. That is the fact. But intent. What is missing from publicly available, independently verifiable material is unmistakable proof that perpetrators or a state actor hold and implement a policy whose primary aim is the destruction of Christians as a religious group. Many reports point instead to mixed motives: territorial control, revenge, criminal profit, local feuds, jihadist ideology in some zones. Until impartial investigators can show a coherent policy structure and intent targeting Christians as Christians, the legal label genocide remains contested. My fellow Africans, let's now examine the humanitarian narrative. To understand the justification, we must first understand the story. For years, international observers have reported rising violence targeting communities identified by faith. Churches burned, worshippers massacred, clerics abducted. In other regions, mosques too have been attacked and Muslim communities have suffered reprisals. The US frames its possible intervention as a humanitarian response to a potential genocide. Washington officials have drawn comparisons to Darfur and the Balkans, warning that When the world remains silent, genocide thrives. They cite past failures, Rwanda in 1994, where the world watched as 800,000 people were slaughtered as reasons to act early. On the surface, the US position appears moral. It is a message that resonates with many in the West who see religious persecution as a violation of the most basic human rights. American lawmakers, particularly those influenced by religious advocacy groups, have long pressured the White House to protect Christians in Nigeria. Non-governmental organizations, missionary networks, and human rights campaigners have all played a role in shaping the conversation. But Nigeria's reality is not that simple. There is a web of factors: religion, ethnicity, land, climate, and politics, all interwoven. To call it purely religious is to ignore its roots in competition for resources, historical mistrust, and poor governance. If the US arrives under the banner of humanitarianism, it will find a crisis that is deeper than religious persecution, a crisis of identity and leadership. To every action, there must be intention. Let's have a look at the strategic undercurrents. When the United States speaks of peace, it also thinks of power. Nigeria's strategic value is beyond question. It is rich in oil, gas, and minerals, the kind of resources that shape global energy politics. Its territory also offers military advantage, access to the Gulf of Guinea, proximity to the Sahel, and a commanding position in West Africa. Washington has long worried about the growing influence of China and Russia on the continent. China is already Nigeria's largest trading partner. Russia has signed defense agreements with several African states. And after French troops were expelled from Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, Western military influence in the region weakened significantly. A military or humanitarian presence in Nigeria will restore some of that balance, re-establishing a strong Western foothold in the region. Beyond security, there is diplomatic influence. A country like Nigeria, with its over 200 million citizens, represents an immense political weight in African and global affairs. Having American troops operating within its borders could translate into influence over African Union decisions, regional policies, and global voting alliances. Thus, behind every humanitarian rhetoric, there is also a strategic calculation. To protect is also to position. To aid is also to align. And now to the African dilemma. Africa has had this story before. In Libya, the call was to protect civilians from a dictator. The result was the collapse of an entire nation and the spread of arms that destabilized the Sahel. In Somalia, peacekeeping turned into decades of dependence. In the Congo, mining interests hid behind humanitarian operations. The dilemma is constant. Africa needs help, but help often comes with chains. Nigeria now stands in that shadow. Its government is under pressure, both domestically to end violence and internationally to accept foreign assistance. The public itself is divided. Some believe foreign troops may bring order and protection to communities that have suffered for too long. Others fear a repeat of history, where intervention becomes occupation. The truth is that African governments have too often failed to protect their citizens. And when domestic responsibility fails, foreign intervention becomes justified, at least on paper. The question is simple yet heavy. Can Africa trust the hand that reaches out, or is that hand preparing to grip? Can Nigeria solve our religious and ethnic crisis without becoming a stage for international agenda? My people, let's look at the test of sovereignty. For Nigeria, this movement is more than violence or aid. It is a test of national will. It is a question of whether Nigeria can confront its challenges without becoming a battleground for foreign interest. True partnership demands respect, not reliance. If the United States seeks to help, it must do so through transparency, collaboration, and respect for local structures. If Nigeria accepts that help, it must do so from a position of equality, not desperation. True partnership means support without subjugation. True humanitarianism means aid without agenda. The world's history shows that nations rarely give without expecting return. Therefore, the burden is on African leadership to be wise, watchful, and united. Sovereignty is not just about flags and borders. It's about decisions made without fear or dependence. And for Nigeria, those decisions will define its place in Africa's future. Nigeria must ask, what is the price of peace, and who will pay it? Will American troops come as allies or arbiters? Will they leave when the smoke clears or when the interests shift? As the continent watches, this moment is bigger than one country or one faith. It is about Africa's right to determine her own destiny, to guard her own peace, and to define her own justice. In the end, my people, this is more than a story of Nigeria and the United States. It is the age-old struggle between dependence and dignity. It is the continuous test of whether Africa can balance cooperation with control, friendship with freedom, and security with sovereignty. The eagle hovers over the savannah, watchful, calculating, waiting. It claims to protect, yet its shadow stretches far. Africa's history has been a story of such shadows, of powers that enter with promises and leave with profits. But Africa is changing. Our people are awake. Our youth are questioning. Our future demands that aid never become another form of control. If the United States truly wishes to help, let it empower, not occupy. Let it invest in peace, not profit. And let Nigeria prove that Africa can defend our own people while keeping our sovereignty intact. For the true defense of Africa will not come from foreign troops, but from Africans who stand united, accountable, and free. I'm your host, Adebayo Oladokun, and this is Strength of Africa TV. If you found value in this conversation, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Deezer. Watch out for the next episode. You don't want to miss it. Until then, tell your own story, because Africa's future is written in African ink. Stay rooted, stay bold, stay African. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next episode. Bye.